The grand ballroom of the Rosewood Hotel sparkled that evening. Gold chandeliers glowed, violins played softly, and the air smelled of expensive perfume. In the middle of the glittering crowd stood Amara Lewis, wearing a simple but elegant white gown that shimmered under the lights. She looked around nervously, holding a tray of champagne glasses. She wasn't working there. She was waiting for her husband Ethan Lewis, who had told her to meet him there for an important announcement. But before she could find him, a sharp voice cut through the noise. "Excuse me," snapped Victoria Hale, her red dress glittering with diamonds. "You missed a glass, waitress." Amara turned, confused. "I'm not," she began softly, but Victoria's cold blue eyes rolled. "Don't lie. I saw you serving drinks earlier. Don't act like you belong here." People nearby turned to look. Some laughed quietly. Amara's cheeks burned with shame. She whispered again, "Ma'am, I think you've mistaken me for someone else." But Victoria smirked. "Oh, really? Then why are you wearing that cheap fabric? No one from this event would be caught dead in such a plain dress." The cruel words strung, but Amara stayed silent. Victoria stepped closer, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Let's see what you're hiding under that fake elegance." Before Amara could move, Victoria grabbed her gown and ripped it down the back. The sound of tearing fabric echoed across the room. Gasps filled the air. Amara stood frozen, her hands shaking, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. Tears welled in her eyes as laughter broke out from a few guests. "Oh, look," Victoria sneered. "Even the color of her skin matches her lies. A black waitress pretending to be one of us." The room went quiet for a second. Then a deep, furious voice thundered from behind them. "What did you just say?" The crowd turned. It was Ethan Lewis, tall, calm, and dangerous in his silence. His face was pale with fury. "Victoria," he said slowly, his voice low and cutting, "you just tore the dress of my wife." Silence fell like a storm. Victoria's face went white as she looked at him in shock. "Your wife," she stammered. Ethan walked to Amara and gently wrapped his jacket around her shoulders. "Yes," he said, eyes blazing. "My wife. The woman you just humiliated in front of everyone." Amara looked up at him, trembling, and saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen before, a fire she didn't know he had. The crowd watched, whispering, as Ethan turned back to Victoria. "You have no idea," he said coldly, "who you've just insulted." Days passed since Victoria Hale came to Amara Lewis's home, but her apology still echoed in Amara's heart. She didn't know if she could ever forget the humiliation, but she also couldn't ignore the pain in Victoria's eyes that day. The city was still talking about the incident, but something unexpected started happening. Victoria disappeared from the social scene. No fancy parties, no designer events, no gossip columns. Instead, people began to notice her in different places, at food shelters, helping homeless children, and even volunteering for Amara's charity foundation quietly, without cameras or media. When Ethan Lewis heard about it, he told Amara, maybe she's finally learning what real class means. Amara smiled faintly. "Maybe," she said softly, "people can change if given the chance." One afternoon, as Amara prepared for a big charity event called Hearts United, where they would raise funds for poor families, she received a message. It was from Victoria. It read, "I'd like to donate something personal for your auction. May I come?" Amara hesitated for a moment, then replied, "Yes, but come as yourself, not as a guest of honor." That evening, the hall glowed with warmth, filled with laughter, hope, and kindness. Amara wore a new white dress, beautiful, flowing, and strong, a symbol of healing. As people gathered around the stage, Ethan stood proudly beside her. Then, through the crowd, Victoria walked in, wearing a simple grey dress and carrying a glass box. Murmurs spread, but Amara gestured for silence. Victoria stepped onto the stage, her voice trembling. "A few weeks ago," she began, "I tore a woman's dress out of pride and ignorance. That woman stands before me tonight, more graceful than I will ever be. Inside this box," she said, lifting it up, "is that same dress mended by my own hands and my public apology." The crowd gasped softly. Victoria turned toward Amara, her eyes wet. "You could have destroyed me, Amara, but instead you showed me mercy. You didn't just forgive me, you taught me what forgiveness truly means." Tears glistened in Amara's eyes as she stepped forward and hugged her. The audience burst into applause, some even crying. Ethan smiled proudly as the two women stood together, once enemies, now symbols of change. This, he whispered to a nearby reporter, is what love and humanity look like. Later that night, after the event ended, Amara stood outside under the stars, the cool wind brushing against her hair. Victoria approached her quietly. "Amara," she said, "I'll spend the rest of my life making things right." Amara smiled warmly. "Then your journey has already begun." The two women looked up at the sky, one learning grace, the other healing from pain, both changed forever. The story of that torn dress became a symbol across the city, reminding everyone that no color, no wealth, and no pride could ever measure a person's worth. And as Amara and Ethan walked hand in hand toward their car, he whispered, "You turned pain into purpose, my love." Amara looked at him and said softly, "And you turned silence into strength." Together, they drove off into the night, hearts lighter, lives brighter, and souls forever connected by forgiveness. Subscribe to Teardrop Tailies for more heart-touching real stories, because sometimes, even a broken moment can create the most beautiful ending.